Hello, and welcome to the Tower Coffee Hour and our series on Miller businesses. Today we're going to step out a little bit and talk with one of the service businesses that is here in Miller, and it's interesting. It approaches what we keep talking about aging in Miller, because this is an estate planning attorney. And we're here today with Lance Kutnick of the Scion Law Firm. Welcome, Lance.
Hey, Preston. Thanks for having me over today.
Yeah. So, how did this get started? How did we get in contact?
Well, you reached out to me, but I think you reached out because I'm doing a live presentation next week, actually. And, I'm a law firm. I'm obviously here to have a business and such, but, half the battle is just getting the message out about estate planning and the importance of doing it, and on the opposite side, the consequences for not doing it. In my presentation, we're talking about some serious issues, obviously. We're talking about death planning and incapacity. It's not a fun topic, but I think you're coming out, and anyone else who comes out, despite the seriousness of the topics, we do kind of do it in a fun, whimsical way. Our event's called Pints and Planning. In this case, we can call it Pizza Pints and Planning because we're holding it at Aviator Pizza here in Mueller. So,
What's the date?
That's going to be out Thursday night, February 22nd, 6:30 to 8 p.m.
And how can somebody sign up ahead of time?
So I have this is for the Mueller community mainly. If you look at the Mueller Facebook pages, Mueller 1 and 2, I have some ads there. I have an ad in the Mueller magazine, the newish magazine, and they could go to my website too and contact me, and we could get them a link to register.
Okay. So, lots of ways to get in touch.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's next week.
Yes, sir.
Next week. Okay. So, Lance, what made you get into estate planning? So, where'd you go to school? Where'd you get your law degree?
Well, my undergrad was here at the University of Texas at Austin, where my heart lies. Despite that, UT and I had a mutual parting of the ways and decided law school would not be acquired here in Austin. So, and also personally, I kind of wanted to see the big city, so I wound up at the University of Houston Law Center for law school. And after that, I went back to my hometown of Corpus Christi to begin my law career, which was not in estate planning.
Okay. So how did you make the shift? Estate planning is a fairly narrow piece of the law. How did you make the shift to that?
Yeah, so I don't know if you looked at my bio, but I was a criminal prosecutor for 26 years, starting off with the Nueces County District Attorney Office in Corpus Christi, and did 16 years of prosecution with an agency that shall not be named, doing white-collar crime and public integrity prosecutions, and real proud of that career. But you asked why estate planning. I always did have an interest in estate planning. I did 26 years as a public servant, proud of my career and everything I did. There's a little piece missing as far as from a personal aspect. As a prosecutor, you don't have clients. You represent the state of Texas, kind of on behalf of the victims. My early career, I did everything from drugs to rapes to murders. Those you rape and murder victims, you're never making things whole and setting the record straight. You obtain whatever sense of justice you're striving for, but you're not making that person whole or recovering the family member who maybe passed from a criminal event. While I was up here doing white-collar crime, we're talking victims who suffered possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars in theft losses. You're kind of lucky if you could recover a dime on the dollar for the victim. So, again, proud of what I did, but never making things right. And I kind of missed having just clients, right? So I always did have an interest in estate planning law. And a confluence of factors, both personal and professional, led me to eventually doing estate planning. One, I know I don't look it, but I became pension eligible. I got old enough, so I was able to leave the state, and I took an intensive training course to get ready for estate planning,
Okay.
everything from the nuts and bolts of estate planning to business practices and things like that. And I'm coming up on my third year in estate planning, and it's been very rewarding and gratifying just getting the message out and helping my clients and colleagues out. And at Scion Law Firm, my mission is to keep my clients and their families out of conflict in court.
Okay. As you were doing the prosecution and everything, did you see the cases where people were scamming the elders?
I did actually, as a white collar crime prosecutor, one of the main instruments in an estate plan is a durable financial power of attorney. And I actually had 2 or 3 cases where somebody was given a power of attorney, and in particular, an elderly person gave it out to someone they thought they could trust. And there was anything but a trusting relationship. There's supposed to be a fiduciary duty to act on behalf of the person you're exercising the power for, but a lot of times the person exercising power is for their own selfish interest, and it's devastating.
Yeah. Well, and there's a loss of trust as well as a loss of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just trying to think, which one are my children? Yeah.
Exactly. You need sometimes the parents, when they're giving these powers out, they try to be fair. Like, I guess one to, but at the end of the day, you need to give it to the best person that you can absolutely trust. And we help you guide you down that road and to achieve the best outcome possible.
And that's one of our concerns about Mueller, is that if I become incapacitated, I'm unable to take care of myself, have a stroke, I have whatever. There's no place in Mueller that I can go. I have to leave Mueller, basically. Physically have to leave Mueller. And that concerns me.
Yes, sir.
Because, isolation is one of the worst parts of getting old. And it can lead to a very rapid decline. And so our concern is, how do we create space in Mueller so that people can stay here, can stay with their cadre of support. And so it's, let's talk.
Well, that's an interesting, challenging issue. It's beyond what I
right.
can handle as an estate planner. But yeah, I see what you mean. From a personal level, my parents were Sun City residents, but they moved to a brand new, really nice independent living facility that transitions to dependent if those services are needed.
A life care facility.
Yes, sir.
My mother-in-law was at Westminster Manor for many years and went through the transition. Of course, she lived to be 102 months. Yeah, and she was with it pretty much up to the end, and she made the decision at the end it's time to go.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So that worked out well, and I didn't have to deal with her estate. Her son did that, and it worked really well. That he worked it and managed it, and it worked very, very well. So how does somebody get started with you? Hey, I'm what age? Any age?
Not any age, but I kind of preach once you turn 18, we should kind of begin basic estate planning. A lot of us in our positions, we send our young high school graduates off to college. When our kids turn 18, mom and dad may be shocked to learn we no longer are there legally have any authority. So we kind of preach, start off with the college estate plan when we send our young ones off.
Wow.
And that's a minimal, we don't necessarily have to worry about the passing of assets for most of our 18-year-olds, but it's critically important, in my opinion, that they have a basic medical power of attorney and financial power of attorney. So if they were to get into any sort of trouble, we as the parents can still act on their behalf, whether it's financially or medically.
Yeah, because just assumed I could still do that. Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Not after 18. Wow. Trying to think back to that time. Yeah. My kids are in their 50s now. Yes. Okay, so we're starting at 18. We go through so I assume anything that happens, an accident, an illness, something, we need to have those papers.
Yeah, that's correct. And, I mentioned we start off at 18, but there's a lot of, pretty, if you think about it, obvious life phases that, would kind of maybe not necessarily demand, but you should at least consider engaging in estate planning. So, like I mentioned, start off with the college estate planning. Typical next step is a marriage, possibly in your 20s or 30s. You have a new spouse that you have to consider in possible estate planning, and then you probably want that new spouse instead of mommy and daddy making your medical and financial decisions. Probably your new spouse, and instead of at that point you probably want to consider maybe a basic will to leave your assets to your new spouse. And then I think most people would agree the next step when you have a child, to me that's probably the most critical, important point in one's life, that you should really have an estate plan. What we've mentioned so far is kind of taking care of your medical decisions and financial. At death, it's kind of how are the assets going to be distributed. But with a child, newborn, and all the way up until they get to 18 in college,
Yeah.
you know, the assets are eventually going to be figured out one way or the other, with or without an estate plan. Now, there could be a lot of challenge and drama with that, but establishing proper guardianships for our minor children, that goes to the absolute physical and mental well-being, of our young ones, and so that's why I think that's the most important step.
And I assume that, because I know I did, most of us kind of ignore that until something happens.
Yeah, a lot of people, it's a wake-up call. A lot of my clients, that they have a newborn and they're on top of it within a few months, or some of them take a couple of years. I have others that wait till their kids are teenagers, but yeah, best case scenario. I have a couple clients. They're in the trying phase, for having a kid, and they're trying to get their stuff in order.
Okay. Okay. So here we are, a new wife, 6 years into a new marriage, no kids in common, obviously, at this point. Um, what's the one thing, the most critical thing that you would have me do?
Okay, so if you're talking about yourself, yeah, no kids, but no kids in common. Yeah.
Real children.
So that situation, in my world, we call it a blended family situation. When I'm meeting with clients or potential clients, I go over some options. So, I haven't spoken to you and your partner about your possible plans. It may be you have a joint plan right now. When the first of us is gone, my beloved surviving spouse gets everything, then I don't know what conversations you've had about splitting the assets between the children. Right now, maybe you have everything we have goes 50% to my bloodline, 50% to my spouse's bloodline. And it kind of comes down to, I don't know if I love using the word trust factor, but if you have full faith and confidence, your partner will honor that plan, then that's good. Now, there's no legal obligation. So if you give everything to your partner, 5 years down the road, she might decide everything's going to my bloodline. So, after I plant this seed, it's kind of evil on my part, but, after we have this conversation, if you, my potential client, if you go to bed at night and toss and turn, like, am I going to be doing a disservice to my children? There are things we could do. It's usually through some trust planning where we put some, I kind of call it legal handcuffs or guardrails in place, where you could still let your part of the estate take care of your beloved's partner. But depending on how far you want to go, you put these legal handcuffs in place that you could try to ensure your bloodline is not totally disinherited.
Totally disinherited. One of the things I've heard about is a family trust, and like putting the house into a family trust.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense at all?
It makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense depending on the situation. Okay, tell me when it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I think it makes sense. I can tell you most of my clients wind up in a trust. So let me tell you especially when it pertains to real estate, why that makes sense. Doing the right type of, like I said, my firm's mission statement is keeping my clients out of conflict in court. Avoiding court means avoiding the probate process. Probate is a court proceeding where your estate sues yourself, and it's to get the estate disposed of. Court means attorney fees and court costs, et cetera, et cetera. More importantly, in my mind, it involves not just the direct financial costs of attorney fees and court costs, but it's the time factor and stress. I do estate plans for my clients to totally avoid courts. And it depends on each family situation and the nature of the assets of what that estate plan looks like. But a trust plan, for example, for those of you who don't know what a trust is, long story, it's kind of a fancy legal agreement, but long story short, a trust, think of it like a children's play wagon. Kids want to fill their wagon with toys. A trust, you need to fill the trust with your toys or with your assets. Your house being one of your primary assets. So it's it's a relatively easy procedure, but instead of you owning your home, I will help you deed your home into your trust. And then once your trust owns the house, the trust will spell out where the house goes and in what manner, but not to be glib, but literally before they've buried you, your successor trustee who you've named that will take over can start dealing with your real estate asset. They can put it on the market, like I said, before they've even taken care of your funeral arrangements. And that provides a lot of advantages. Here in Austin, Texas, we have some relatively expensive real estate. There's two really significant costs that can be saved by doing the right type of planning. There's carrying costs. If you have to, well, let's talk the Mueller neighborhood. It's not so hard to imagine on the lower end, your lower end house, 700,000, if not a little more. If a person has a $400,000 mortgage on that 700,000 house, that's roughly 2,000 in mortgage payments per month, taxes another 1,250, maintenance, insurance. So you're easily talking 3,500 on the low end. Some people may be a little lower if they're blessed to have a lower mortgage, but $3,500 if it takes you 6 months to get through probate, and it could take longer. 3,500 times 6 is $21,000 in carrying costs. Then in Austin, we're typically used to real estate going up, up, and up, but there's also a possibility of opportunity costs. If somebody were to die, let's say at the height of the market, which we had a year and a half ago, without the right type of estate planning, if it takes a year to get through probate, house goes down. And we've all seen, a lot of us have seen a six-figure haircut on the price of our homes. So if you have your estate planning set up, if there was a passing at the height of the market, you could be set up to sell at the height of the market.
Okay, because this is very relevant right now, Lance, because we are in the process of listing our house.
Okay.
We're going to move to the condo over at Parkside, right on the lake, and we're talking those kind of numbers.
Yeah.
And so if something happened to me right now, wow, we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And
so
nice
if the market were to go down,
well, even if the market goes down, but the whole issue, if it's in a trust, and if I pass, it doesn't make any difference. It just keeps on keeping on. Okay, because that's one of the things that I've really wanted to be doing, and then get that trust set up, particularly when we go to the condo.
Yeah.
Let's put the condo in the trust.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be talking.
Okay. Yeah, and it's everything from your primary home to if you own a second home or vacation property, and a lot of us own rental properties. We'll go over plans unique to your situation, but we want to put every asset you own into the trust.
Yeah, and that's been my vision. I've got two kids. Ani's got two kids. Grandchildren on both sides. And how do we make it work? Because this is second marriage for both of us.
Yes, sir.
And the kids all came from the first marriage. So, how do we?
Well, I mean, you and your partner, we're going to have a long conversation.
We are going to have a long conversation.
I'm going to learn about you and what you want and how you want it, and we'll get it drafted in a legal instrument that will effectuate your wishes.
So you asked a question the other day, and she said, "You're coming to that meeting the other night. Is it the pints and pizza you're interested in, or is it the planning?" And obviously, it's the planning.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah. We're glad
and
to have everyone out to spread the message.
yeah,
I think I've had people just coming for some beer and pizza,
well, that,
which is
yeah,
fine.
cool, yeah. But it's community, Lance, and that's part of
Yeah.
what you're doing is creating a safe community. You know, I like that. What did you say? Keep you out of conflict with the courts.
Yeah, our mission statement's keeping our clients and families out of conflict in court.
In court. Okay. That sounds like a good mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like to think so.
Yeah. Where were you born?
I was born in San Antonio. My
Okay.
dad was in the Air Force, so Lackland Air Force Base. But pretty much after he did his service in Vietnam, we wound up in Corpus Christi and grew up in Corpus.
Texas all your life, basically?
Basically, except for a few years when my dad was bouncing around in the Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so a Texan born and bred, went to school at UT in Houston. That's not hard to beat that. Yeah. Okay. Married?
Married, coming up on 31 years of marriage.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Have two kids. They're young adults, both in Austin. My son's a civil engineer. My daughter is a CPA.
Oh, that's great. We need more CPAs. I don't know how many more civil engineers we need. Does he work for TxDOT?
No,
Oh,
it
good.
does
Thank
not.
you.
Small
Yeah.
little private firm.
Okay. I have one kid who's a computer. I don't know what to call it. He's got a master's degree in it. That's IT.
Yes, sir.
And he's gone freelance and he codes for Apple products. And he makes a very good living at it. Like, what? You know, I can't track. But he's been playing computers since he was 13, so I guess it's okay. And the other one is a nurse practitioner with a specialty in geriatrics.
Okay.
So I've got that covered.
Yeah.
So, what one thing would you like potential clients to hear from Lance Kutnick?
Well, again, the main thing they need to hear is just estate planning. It's just important. All of us, maybe we do it because it's a law, but we have car insurance. That's mandated by law. It's our houses. Our mortgage company forces us to have insurance on the home. I would like to think most of us would probably opt to do that because there's too much risk not having it. In a similar vein, estate planning, I kind of think of it in that manner. It's a type of insurance. If you don't have an estate planning, there's just too many ways things could go wrong, whether it's just the cost involved in going through probate, whether if you don't have a traditional distribution scheme. So if you don't have a plan, the state's going to have a plan for you. If you have and there's really no such thing per se as a typical family, but just to get to the point, if you have a typical family, the state's plan may match up with what your plan's going to be anyway, as far as who's going to receive the assets. But if your plan is different than what the state has in mind, then you're going to be wherever you are, heaven above, looking down, and things aren't going to happen as you like. There's also not just the death distribution planning, but kind of we've alluded to it, incapacity planning.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a single person, kind of our younger people in our 20s, there's situations if one of our young persons in a car wreck in a coma, mom and dad, if their heart's in the right place, they're going to want to step in and be the medical decision maker. Now that young person may have a significant girlfriend that just steps away from being a wife, or best friend who's a doctor, and maybe that young person would want another person besides mom and dad making decisions. So that could get into an ugly situation possibly. So those are the things that go into the trying to avoid conflict. But basically, the long story short and the lesson to be learned is you, while you're able to, should be responsible and make your plan that's going to work best for you and your family and loved ones.
This is one of those. my wife, my late wife, been having issues and coming along and went into the hospital and was having trouble breathing, and they got her, in the breathing and working and stuff. They called me that night after I'd gone home and said, "You better come back to the hospital." And I came back, and she had been intubated. She was on a breather, a ventilator, and my son, the nurse practitioner, came with me, and he was there. And I said, here it is. What's happening?" He said, "She's not going to make it. The pH level would change, and all these things, technical things." So I turned to the head of ICU and said, "What are my choices?" And I said, "But before you answer that, I put 6 documents down on the table." So I had a durable power of attorney. I had instructions to the medical, all those documents to lay it out. And she looked at me, and she, big smile. She says, "Thank you." Because there it was. And it was my wife's wishes.
Yeah.
It's the document she signed, she had made up and signed. So
Yeah.
here's what I want.
Yeah, and you're probably referring primarily to, an advance directive. And,
Advance directive.
to me, that's important. You should make the choice, if you want kind of the artificial means. I can tell you most of my clients don't want to put both their physical, spiritual body and their family through it. I look at it like you're making the decision. Your medical power of attorney may have to be the instrument relaying your decision, but I think it's a blessing to give to your family and medical power of attorney that you've made the decision.
Yes.
And I like to think it alleviates a lot of the guilt, maybe just the person who vocalizes what your decision is.
Yeah,
That they're not making the decision
yeah,
themselves.
here's the decision.
Yeah.
And, the head of the ICU said, "Thank you." So it was easy. She had made her choice.
Yeah.
And there it was. So, yeah, I believe.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that personal story with me.
I believe it's a tough time.
Yes, sir.
Tough time. And I think that's an important point here. In those tough times, are you going to make good decisions? Maybe, maybe not. But if you've already sat down and gone through it with your loved one, if you've sat down and gone through it with these people, then it's there. It's written down. It's done.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Do you mind if I loop back to another thing about our younger? Yeah. So I've kind of alluded to it, but one of my favorite client sets is young families with young children. Okay. If that type of family has a prior, even a pretty basic, simple estate plan with a will, unless they're lawyer committed, just gross malpractice, they probably have a permanent guardian name for that child. Okay. Now, that being said, there's a lot of plans out there. As far as I know, most law firms aren't doing one extra service we provide for our young families. But you can probably imagine the typical situation: mommy and daddy go out for a date night, leave their 3 and 6-year-old kids at home with a babysitter. If the parents don't make it home because of a car wreck or what have you, let me ask you, Preston, the cops somehow find the parents on the side of the road. They backtrack to the home, find the 3 and 6-year-old running around with a 6-year-old babysitter. Let me ask you, or all the parents out there, what do you think happens to those children in the first 24 to 72 hours?
They're in Child Protective Services.
That's a very realistic outcome. So you're compounding one tragedy, the parents either being deceased or in comas or what have you, with the emotional trauma of CPS taking custody of the kids. We offer, as part of our package, we call it a temporary emergency guardian nomination, and it's your permanent guardians that you have named, maybe relatives in Houston or Miami or New York, yeah. Right? These temporary emergency guardians, we want you to nominate somebody local. Whether it's friends or family. It may be your next door neighbor that you just kind of associate with. Yeah. Somebody who's willing to step in for 24 to 72 hours. You're not asking the person to raise their kids for the next 10 years. but just somebody who could get there within 20 or 30 minutes and take temporary custody. So, we think that's a pretty important part of our estate planning.
And so you have to think about all that stuff that we don't.
Yeah. So I've thought about it all, and I hope you get a plan that's going to work for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sure I'll be talking with you, and we'll sit down and do it. It's not our kids that we're worried about; it's the grandchildren.
Yes, sir.
Here's the value of this house. What happens to it? Where does it go? And that's why I think the trust makes so much sense. Is that it's in a trust.
Okay. Sounds like you've done some education on the matter.
Well, yeah, and I'm 80 years old.
Yeah.
I've learned some stuff over that time. It's not all true. That's the scary part. That's why we come to you as a professional and assume that you have got it right. Yeah. So.
I'd like to believe so.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. This has been very informative.
Well, thanks for having me.
I hope people hear it and can think about the ramifications of some of the stuff you talked about.
Okay.
That last one was the one like, wow, because I've got some really good friends here, and we've done a podcast with a lady here who's got 2 kids at home. It's kind of a situation you're talking about, homeschooling, all that kind of stuff. And if something happened to her today? Yeah.
So before we began the interview, we were talking off camera. We were talking about the name of my law firm.
Oh, great. Good. I was hoping you would get back to that.
Yeah, if I could speak to that.
Yes.
So, my lovely wife is the creator of the law firm name, and my law firm, it's Scion Law Firm. We have it on the website, but if you look up the definition in Webster's Dictionary, the definition, well, one part of the name is, I think it sounds cool. So that's number one. Number two, the definition, like I said, is a descendant of a notable family. So I believe that definition fits in with what we're doing at Scion Law Firm in estate planning. It's how we're treating our descendants and the legacy and gift we're leaving behind. At Scion Law Firm, we don't care if if the family's worth $50,000 or $50 million. We are going to treat everyone as a Scion. Now, kind of another funny story about Scion. In today's age, it kind of it's been used in a notorious manner. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a lawyer in South Carolina who murdered his wife and son. Perhaps you saw that story. So he was known as a Scion of the legal community out in South Carolina, where he's from. We have a former president who was known as a Scion of the New York real estate industry. So it kind of has this negative meaning right now, but the pure definition, it's very applicable to what we're doing, and I love it.
Isn't there an automobile named Scion?
It's a cheap version of a Toyota. Kind of a young, cheap Toyota, but yes, sir.
How about in the plant world?
There is that. I know we have that on the website, but to be honest, I don't even remember that portion of it.
But it's taking the cuttings of one plant and grafting it into the rootstock of another, and that's how they make most of the grapes we use for wine in the world. Okay. It's just like that. Yeah. Well, so that's when I saw that, I thought, oh, okay.
Yeah. I prefer whiskey and beer, so so I'm not that in tune with that part of it.
Okay, you said, again, off camera, you said that your family was from Russia?
Way back when.
Way back when. Yeah, okay. That's cool. And this is that whole vision that we were talking about we're all one. It's this massive humanity that makes up this amazing community of life. And we're all uniquely different. And that's what makes it special, is that, we are 2 old white guys. But look at the difference in our backgrounds and what we bring to the party, that we can share with our friends and neighbors. So, Lance, appreciate it.
Preston, thanks a
lot.
lot.
We'll see how this works. Yeah. We'll see you at Aviator Pizza.
Okay, come a little early so we can get drinking.
Well, let me close this out. There we go. So
why you
that's
did-
Lance Kutnick, and we're going to finish up the Tower Coffee Hour series on Mueller businesses with the Scion law firm. And you've heard the discussion about where that name comes from. So thank you. We appreciate you listening.